Sandy Parker, and welcome to Crafting for Almost Everyone. We are back to being Jennifer McGuire for the day, at least in her technique, and we're going to be working on one called an Easy Distress Ink watercolor background, and it requires a big background stamp and some watercolor paper and obviously some distress inks. So the way we're going to start this is we're going to take our Versamark ink, and we're going to ink up our stamp really well with it and make sure that we get the whole stamp really well. It looks good. If it isn't, I've pounded enough that I've burned off a few calories. We're going to use the flat side of this watercolor paper because watercolor paper usually has like a textured side and a flat side. So I'm going to use the flat side facing my stamp, and I'm going to rub really hard over my paper because it's thick paper and I want to make sure that my image really transfers well. If this wasn't clear ink, I'd put a piece of paper between me and the paper I'm rubbing because you don't want to get it all over you, but since this is clear ink, it doesn't really matter to me. Lift it up then very carefully, and whoops, you should be able to see it once we put the clear embossing powder on it. We're going to be using Ranger clear embossing powder, and I'm going to put a piece of scrap paper under it. And I did already wipe my surface with my little pouch, you've seen it before, that has cornstarch in it, so that I shouldn't have a lot of stray embossing powder all over my background. Hopefully we won't. And if you think that there's a spot that you missed, then just, you can go back over it. We can put more embossing powder over it a second time before we heat it. It's hard to tap this because it is almost completely covered. Okay, we'll lay that down, and before I get it everywhere, we're going to put it back in the bottle. If you've never seen me heat set, the way I like to do it is I make sure that my heat gun is nice and hot, and so you turn it on for maybe 15 seconds, and then I heat from the back of my paper because I want my image, I don't know if you can see that or not, but I want my image to really heat well. And sometimes when I heat it from the front, I don't know, it just doesn't seem to heat right. So I think for me at least, it works better if I start from the back and heat it. And remember, this is really heavy duty paper, so it's going to take a little bit of time for us to get it to melt all this embossing powder. And then I just go around to the front after I have got most of it melted. Looks pretty good. Now I'm working on a craft mat. Actually, it's a cutting mat that I got from a Dollar Tree, and it worked good for these kinds of projects because you can just wipe it off after you're done. One side has got ridges and the other side doesn't, so we're working off the side that doesn't have any ridges. And if you don't have something like this to work on, you can work on a craft mat or newspaper. You can work on anything that you can just, that will work just to protect the image underneath. And what we're going to be doing now, she used the little daubers, but I think I'm just going to kind of go from spot to spot and just, I'll show you in a second. I'm using wild honey, spiced marmalade, dusty Concord, and Seedless Preserves. I do have a green. I thought I might use a little Mowed lawn. And what we're going to do next is I'm going to start with my dusty Concord, and instead of using any tool, I'm just going to take my little mini we'll call it ink pad, and just push around in little spots. I'm not going for any kind of accuracy, or I'm not trying to make sure that it, like everything is lined up. I'm just putting a little here and there. I just want to make sure that, I have a lot of each color, or some of each color at least. And that was the Spice Marmalade. And I'm going to do the Wild Honey. And it doesn't matter if you overlap them. Put a little bit in that corner. And that. See a little bit of the Seedless Preserves. The Seedless Preserves is a little bit more of a, I guess I'll call it redder purple. Maybe not. Seems like it is. Put a little bit more in that corner because I don't have any there. And then, last but not least, I'm going to put a few little spots of my Mowed lawn, just here and there. Spots that I want to, if I don't like the color in a certain spot, I can always go over it with a different color and kind of change it up a little bit. If I want more purple, I can put more purple in. I think I want a little bit more orange, so let's put a little more orange around. And by orange, I mean Spice Marmalade. And I think I'm going to put a little bit more of that Dusty Concord because I like the darker purple. I think it shows up better. Okay. Now, I'm going to take just an old rag, and this is a baby, not a bib this time, it's just a baby washcloth that I have, and these come in really handy. You can get these at thrift stores, or if you know anybody whose baby they don't need them for their babies anymore, you should ask them for these because they are really handy. And I'm just wiping off a little bit off of my white background. Then the next thing we're going to do is I made my own clear shimmer spray, and the way I did that was I took water and I just added to it some mica powder, and mica powder you'll find in eyeshadows, and the cheapest eyeshadow that I found it in is at the Dollar Tree. It's a brand called LA Colors, and it's a bottle, it's a pot about this high, and when you open it, don't take the top off, stick an X-Acto knife onto the edge of the bottom inside and pop that out, and you won't believe how much is in there. Lindsay the Frugal Crafter taught us that a long time ago, and I've always used that as a good way of doing things. Now, this glimmer spray, all I did was I just put a little bit of that mica in with my water, and when you shake this, you don't want to shake it up and down like this. You want to shake it like a bell, because otherwise your mica gets caught up into your little sprayer, and you don't want that to happen, because if you get it in your sprayer, then you won't be able to spray at all. And the first two sprays, there we go. And we're really going to saturate this because I want to be able to play with the inks and see what they will do. Because these are distress inks, they'll move, and I don't know if you can see that glimmer, but the glimmer is really cool looking. And Jennifer does not dry this with a heat tool. She just lets it dry. I'm going to get the edges a little bit better. And that's another reason why we have it on this mat, is because these colors are going to, the water is going to move it all over the place. Now, if you have Perfect Pearls or any of the pearl products that you can get that are made specifically for this technique, by all means, if you have it, use it. But if you want to do it inexpensively, I would recommend doing it with the mica powder. And again, it's the LA Colors that you get at Dollar Tree, and you can get them in a bunch of different colors, but I just got the white, and I put in a bottle. This is an old one of those not Bath and Body Works, but you know those ones you get at Christmas time that have really inexpensive sprays in them. Well, I go to garage sales, and if people have those for sale, I'll say to them, you know, I don't really want the powder, what you have in there, but I would really like the bottle. How much would you be willing to sell me the bottles for? And people are really nice about it, because they know that most people don't want to buy that used spray. So that's just more advice on how to get a bunch of these bottles very inexpensively. So here's where we stand right now with our image, and we're going to let that dry. Again, we're not going to dry it with a heat tool, because we want this to really kind of dry organically. So I'll be back once it's dry. So now our paper is completely dry, and we have that big shine that you get when you have an embossed surface, and we're going to take that off. And the way we're going to do that is using my iron that I never use for anything else. Let's face it, I'm not an ironer. If you do want to know my ironing secrets, all you do is you take a spray bottle, put a little bit of white vinegar in it and a lot of water, and you spray that on, and that'll get wrinkles off clothes. But I digress. Back to our project. The way we're going to do this is I have a couple pieces of paper here that are just scrap, and I'm going to put my image between the two, and I'm just going to iron over it. I have it on a dry setting. I don't have it on something that's going to emit steam, and I think you can see the pattern is coming through my scrap paper, and that's good, because that means it's taking off the layer that we want to have come off, and at the same time it's flattening out our watercolor paper, so that's nice too. Let's see how we did. Okay, I think it did a really good job. It took off that raised image, and it took off that gloss. I like it. So that's all we had to do with the iron. I can get that out of the way before I end up burning myself or the dogs or anyone else in the vicinity. So our next step is to cut our paper down and to put it into or onto its background. I have a sentiment that I'm going to use for it, and I'm not sure yet if I'm going to put the sentiment on the paper. I have a white background, and then I have this blue layer that purple layer that I really liked, and that's going to go right there. So then I'm going to cut my what are we calling this? I forgot this technique. The name of it is a Distress Ink watercolor background with the iron off embossing. Should have remembered that. If I was Jennifer, I would have remembered, huh? So let's cut this down a little bit. My background piece is, let's see, it's 5 1/4. So I think I probably want to make this 5, because I really like that purple, and I want you to be able to see the purple. And then my width is going to be, I think this is already 4. Just making sure. I'm pretty sure it's 4. Yep, it's 4. So I'm going to go about 3 3/4. So I'm going to go right there. I'll put that in, and that should take care of everything except for our sentiment. So I decided for my sentiment I would put it on vellum, and I'm going to be using this from Hero Arts, Just Saying Hi, an old-fashioned hello, and a phone. I thought that'd be kind of cute. So we're going to use some of this embossing pearl gold. It's old. I hope it works, but it doesn't look bad. I hope it does work. And we're going to, of course, use some Versamark ink on it first. I did run my little pouch over the vellum to make sure that I didn't get any fingerprints or any static or any stray pieces of embossing powder on things. And this is very exciting for me because I don't know if you know, but I had to send my Misty away for a little emergency surgery. What I did was I used a stamp cleaner that was really harsh, and it was way too harsh for the Misty, and it just took the grit off. So that was a bummer, and hopefully that won't happen again because I learned my lesson, but you know, I have a memory like a 3-year-old kid. I don't know if you'll be able to see this yet or not, but I have the image on the vellum, and I'm heating up my gun, and now I'm just going to go on the back of the vellum and hope that I don't do anything to melt the vellum. I'm going to do it very quickly. Oh, it's really pretty. Let's just hope you can see it once we put it on our card. So our card base, I think you can see it. Maybe you can't. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think you can see it? I think good enough. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to cut a notch out of the center of our, we're going to make this a banner. So we're going to cut the top off. Maybe we'll make the banner part of it first. That makes more sense, doesn't it? Yeah, I think it does. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a ruler and we're going to mark in the center of our piece of vellum, and I'm going to put a little dot with a pen, very little dot with the pen in the center. And the way and what we're going to use that for is when we cut we're going to make a banner cut, and when we cut it, we want to make sure that it's absolutely straight. And the best way to do that, as you know, is to have a measurement or a little mark in the middle. Well, if you didn't know that, that's the best way to do it. You make a little mark in the center, and you go straight up. I'm going to make my mark go up a little bit further, because I want to have it so that I can really tell where the centerpiece is. I'm going to go right. That ought to do it. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut from my corner lines, and I'm going to cut to that mark, that center mark. And it's good if you have really long shears like these, that you can make it all in one smooth cut. If you can't, it's okay, but it works way better if you can, because then you get a much straighter edge like that. And if we need it to be shorter, we can make it shorter, obviously, but at this point, that's how long our base is going to be. And then I'm going to trim the top off once we get our pieces glued down. So our first step is to, our first step is to make a big mess and a lot of noise. And then our second step is probably repeat the first step. Oh, look how great this is working. Perfect. I'll just keep pulling it off and laying it down. Won't be the first time you've seen me do this, will it? And then one more line on the very edge. Probably never in the history of people doing videos have you seen this many times where somebody's used a glue runner or a tape runner, and they had to do the actual tape runner with their hands and rip the paper back off like that. How many of you have watched that in action? Probably not many. I think that's the end of that, thankfully. So here is our card base, and I'm going to turn it sideways so that I can really see where my lines are, so that I can make sure that everything is spaced pretty much. That edge right there, close enough. There's that one, and then now this is going to be harder to keep down. Hopefully this tape will hold it down, but if it doesn't, we can always put some tear tape on it. I am putting a lot, you can tell I'm putting a lot on because I want to make sure that it stays there. And then I'm going to put that piece, center it up, hopefully. Okay. Now our goal is to just trim that. I think I'm going to trim it right above the phone. That's what I think I'm going to do. I would have let all of you vote, but none of you have the ability to tell me anything. It's too bad you don't, because it would have come in handy. Especially when I've done some really foolish things with my MISTI, etc. Now, I don't know if you know this, but with vellum, the tricky part is anything you use to glue it down will show. So I'm going to put my adhesive behind the phone and behind where it says an old-fashioned hello. And then I'm going to put a couple, well, I'm going to try to find some sequins or some dots of some kind that will be things that we can put little dots of glue under. Okay, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some of these, the little zots or, glue dots that I've made. I'm going to put them underneath my different sequins, but I'm also going to put them, the sequin, well, the actual piece will be underneath, as it's going to be underneath the vellum as well. Boy, I'm sorry, I'm having a heck of a time thinking of words tonight, and I hate it when that happens. But every once in a while, you just cannot remember a word, if you know what I mean. Okay, so now all we're going to do is put a little washi tape on the back flap of our envelope so that it matches the pattern of our card, and we'll be all set. This washi is one that it's made out of cloth, and I got it at the Dollar Tree. And it's very uneven, so if you ever buy their washi and it's cloth, be prepared that it might not be all one width. It might be a little bit wider, a little bit narrower, a little bit wider, a little narrower. It just comes and goes as it pleases. Just thought I'd forewarn you that that could happen to you. So this is, let's look at our card and our envelope. There's our card and our envelope, and that is our technique called Easy Distress Ink Watercolor Background with the iron off embossing, and I think it came out pretty cute. I'm proud that I'm doing a little bit different than just the white pigment inks, which was what it seemed like at the beginning. All of my cards were using that, so I'm branching out, and I hope you appreciate that too, that I'm trying some new and different Jennifer techniques. So I hope you give this a thumbs up and subscribe, and please tell one friend about me on social media. And if they tell one friend, just think about it. One friend tells a friend, then another and another, and my 3,000 subscribers will be a matter of time. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.